I discovered that talent of mine to be able to draw or paint in a manner of so or so, matter of fact of Picasso. Well, a woman, an English woman, a titled English woman, walked in one day to my room and she saw on the wall, pinned on the wall, a drawing. I said, hey, where you got that Picasso? I say, well, do you think it's a Picasso? I say, well, I know enough about Picasso to know whether it's a Picasso or not. I say, fine. He said, would you sell it? I say, well, delighted. So she says, well, how much I can't remember. She said, I think 50 pounds, I think she offered me. And I did sell it. I didn't feel good about it. She was a friend. But the 50 pound helped me a great deal because it was the day of the payment for the rent. And I didn't have the money for the rent. So I sold it to her. And then, very timidly, I made 2-3 other drawings. I walked on the Rue de Seine to a big dealer. And I showed him. He says, yes, fine, how much you want for them? And I suddenly realized I can sell something absolutely unexpectedly for quite great deal of money in a time when I was unable, but absolutely unable, to sell any of my paintings. I know one thing, I never offered a painting or a drawing to a museum who didn't buy it. That never refused one. Never. Van Island, there was absolutely nothing here. There was not one single house here. They were in the totality to construction on the whole hill. You must admit it that the position of the house, with all that around the whole panorama, is quite unique. The island is simpatico, as they say in Chinese. I find the people amusing. There is always a group of interesting people here. There's always people you can talk. There are always people you can make love with. You find always people for company. You always find someone to make not only a chat, but an interesting conversation. What did Michelangelo do? The famous Bacchus, what he discovered when he was 22 in his garden and sold it to Cosimo de Medici. It was never a Greek statue. He made it, he buried it, he rediscovered it, and sold it very expensively to Medici.
He has to live too.
Well, sure he did. I would like to have a steak, just a simple steak, without any shishi, without any trimmings, just simple, like a poor Hungarian refugee likes to eat.
Yes. Are you really Hungarian?
Yes, sir. Yeah, Hungarian. Born in Dracula's land. Okay, please, let's stop it. I want to eat. Then when I am finished eating, I am ready for all kind of dialogue, even about l'amour. I always, since my early youth, since age of 5, 6, I always made drawings. And of course it's very difficult to recollect, but I do remember that I was sort of a grown-up boy, age of 10, 12, and I visited my grandparents and I found a number of drawings framed in my grandmother's house, hanging on the wall. It came as a great surprise, and she said I was about age of 5, 6, 7 when I made those drawings. So obviously there were drawings who she found nice enough to hang them, not only because it was made by me, but because she was a very civilized, very intelligent woman with a very large collection of paintings and antiques, and she didn't know exactly what was good or bad. You know, when you see anybody with that cesta, or whatever you call it, you know he lives in Ibiza or is in Ibizenko, because the ones you carry in your hand, no. But even if you go on in Chelsea on King's Road, or you go around on somewhere around Piccadilly, or you go on Fifth Avenue, that is a sure sign that the person lives in Ibiza. my friend Cliff Irving, he always wears it, even in New York, London, Paris, wherever he goes. If he goes out in a very elegant place, if he wears a coat with a mink collar, he still has his cesta on his shoulder. True, I do too. Wherever I go. If I go to Madrid, if I go to Barcelona, if I travel, I have it always with me. And it's terribly convenient beside everything else. And then I proceeded to France, to Paris, where I studied under Fernand Léger at the Académie Grand Chaumière. And then I was painting in France, and I had a number of paintings going in smaller or larger collections. The war broke out. I stupidly enough went back to Budapest when already other people sort of tried to get over the Atlantic. I returned to Budapest. Yeah, I think we should lock it with all the equipment here. My keys? Yeah, I have my keys. All right, so we go. All right, Mark, let's go. Arriving to Paris, after the war, I tried to work. I did paint. I did try to establish myself with a hope of even of not big success, but enough to make a living, if not an elegant living, but a living, something enough to have to eat, and once in a while I can buy myself a suit, or I can go to a good restaurant, or so forth. Well, I wasn't able. So, when the first time I saw with that easiness a drawing what took me exactly 5 minutes to make, and it assured my living for the next month or 2 months, I would like to see that poor Hungarian refugee who would have resisted of that temptation. I decided to go to Belgium, Scandinavia. In Scandinavia, I sold 5 drawings to a big gallery called the United or International Gallery in Stockholm. The money I got somewhere around between $5,000 and $10,000 just for drawings. I took a one-way ticket to South America. I settled in Rio on my own paintings. I didn't want to paint anything but my own paintings. Somehow I got tired of Rio. I went to United States, and I stayed on ultimately 12 years in the United States. I am freezing. Wait, what is happening here? Where's the cold coming in?
There was a door open downstairs. I shut it.
I'm absolutely freezing. I must put something on. I'm sorry. I have to put something on, but I cannot stand it cold. So tomorrow the party is a big party, so don't miss it tomorrow at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock.
Thank you very much.
Ibiza is not a place of snobbish society. That's not London, it's not Paris, it's not Omaha. It is Ibiza, and that's the charm of Ibiza, and that's what makes Ibiza why we like to live here. Well, I invite you both for a big party tomorrow.
Oh, thank you.
At 8 o'clock, the big party. And that is Montesol. It is the place where people come by between 10 and 12. They read their paper, they read other people's letters, they tell who slept with whom that night, and how it happened, and everybody minds everybody else's business very intensely. I remember some years ago, somebody made a very nasty remark about my private life. And I saw the person sitting on a Montesol in the morning at 12 o'clock, surrounded by some people, and I walked straight over to him and I said, "Is that remark true you've been saying, you said yesterday?" And he says, "Yes, what about?" I said, you who sleeps with everyone you can get hold of, you who cheat your wife, who doesn't send money for your children, you who run away, who screws around, you who make the orgies in your house, you are the last one to criticize someone. Would you like to come tomorrow? I'm having a cocktail party with Francis. If you feel like to come, do come. Bring Maria or anybody who wants to. Right? That's a parameter. I would like to go back to California. It's one place I would like to go back. New York and all the rest, Chicago, Kansas City, Omaha, they can all have it. But California is something else. California is a charm, something that suits me perfectly. And if I would ever decide to live somewhere else, there are only two places, Rio de Janeiro or California. Anywhere between San Francisco and San Diego. I take it.
Did you sell a lot of work in California?
Not a lot. Here and there, I sort of struggled along, let's put it that way. I struggled. I had my ups. I lived very simply. I lived on my own paintings. I sold them for $10, $15, my own canvases. And then sometimes when I had absolutely no money, I was completely broke, I made a Modigliani drawing. I took him to one of the big dealers around Beverly Hills, and never happened that I didn't sell them. I always sold them. Look, look how charming it is. Mark, come and see that. Look how nice it is. Isn't that charming? Huh?
You don't see this back in Omaha?
No, not in Omaha. No. That's one thing you don't. Well, I would like to make, first of all, a point. I don't copy painters. I paint in a certain style. It could be in the style of Matisse, or in the style of Modigliani, style of Picasso, style of Dufy. I don't copy. I never copied one. About Matisse, of course, even a painting like this one, he made a whole series of the same. You know, he made 10, but each one of them different version. Mine is one version, but it's not a copy of any of them who exist. Matisse drawings line were never that sure as mine. He was hesitant when he made a drawing, you know. He added to it a little more and a little more. It wasn't as flowing, it wasn't as sure as mine. I had to hesitate. I had to hesitate to make it more Matisse-like. I don't feel bad for Modigliani. I feel good for me. He worked very little. He died very early. So if they added to fewer paintings or fewer drawings, it's not going to destroy his oeuvre. Not in the least. If I would have made hundreds of Modigliani, possibly yes. But I didn't make hundreds of Modigliani. I made few Modiglianis, and they were recognized by Madame Modigliani and by all the great experts. Yes. I made some Picasso without any trouble, and I sold them. Matter of fact, as far as I know, one of the dealers went to Picasso for authentication and asked, is that by you? How much you paid? He said $100,000. Well, that must be. I'm sure it's by me if you paid that much for it. Let's hope he's home, yeah?
This is his car, isn't it?
Yeah. David, I come to invite you for a big party for tomorrow.
Nice of you. Good morning. How are you? Good morning. I have a terrible cold.
Yeah, but don't worry about nothing. Now, come on, let's walk somewhere. I would prefer to sell my own paintings and my own drawings. I don't think so I ever felt great about, you know, to fool people. I do feel amused about that I'm able to fool once in a while somebody very, very pompous and somebody very pretentious. That I like, that idea. But, you know, to live on it, you know, and on making it more than necessary, I never did beside, you know. I unhappily sold everything what I sold very miserably. The big money what was never made by me. It was always made by the dealers and the people who resold it. What I got for it was a token. I would like to get something like that, but a little bit wider. Somehow wider with that cross section, you know, as I explained it to you the last time, you know. So we take a measure and we put it on, we make it as much, yes. I think it, also that one is, I think, very beautiful. And so next time I come in, you will make the measure of it, and you do that, okay? You make me a good price. As long as it's all, being a poor refugee, in Ibiza, can't afford too high prices. To prove my point to the world, that very point, what I always insisted, that the so-called experts are people who are greatly pretentious, pretend to know something, what they only know very superficially. The so-called art directors are probably excellent people to raise money for their art institution, but their knowledge on art is absolutely negligible. They could do very well without them, the world. Well, Cliff Irving left Ibiza for New York.
I wanted to find out what it was really like to try and get an expertise on a fake. And I asked Elmyr to do 3 drawings for me, 2 Matisse and a Modigliani, which he did before lunch, and put a little coffee stain on the edge of the Modigliani to make it look really as if Modigliani had done it in some Paris cafe. I then took the 3 drawings to the Museum of Modern Art and gave them some tall tale that I had inherited them from an aunt in France, and I had no idea how she'd gotten them. I didn't even know the aunt. And I'd heard so much about fake art lately that before I sold them, I wanted to find out if they were genuine. The museum examined them for 2 hours and came back with the verdict that they were absolutely genuine, and in fact were horrified that I wanted to sell them.
But it's a true story. The story is absolutely true.
What happened to this drawing now?
Well, Mr. Irving pretends that he destroyed them. Oni svaki mali pas. I don't think so. Mr. Irving's character is exactly a character who would destroy something that he got an offer of 15,000 pesetas. I think it's a nice security in a bank vault what could be unwrapped in 15 years again. But I'm not accusing him anything. I was mildly surprised after I asked him for 15 times where are the drawings, because our agreement was that he brings them back to me. That he said, well, I destroyed them.
My personal feelings about Elmyr are very mixed. I find him charming and lovable. He has developed a fiction about his life. If you were to put it to Elmyr that he had taken advantage of the world, that he had cheated people, he'd be horrified. In Elmyr's mind, truth and fiction have become totally intertwined.
The night previously in a restaurant called Olivo, somebody walks over to me, matter of fact, Brigitte de la Victoire, who says Jacqueline de Reeves, who arrives, who's a woman of fame and charm and elegance and wealth, and also one of the best dressed women who matters a great deal in our world. So she says, Jacqueline de Reeves wants to know you. Can she visit you tomorrow? I said, naturally. So Jacqueline de Reeves next day at 7 o'clock in the evening arrives. She walks in, my dear, says, I must meet you. We have so many friends in common. Every time I return to Paris, people ask me, have you met Elmyr? So finally, I want to meet you. And I want to meet the myth of our century, because you are the myth of the 20th century. Says, I have only time for a half an hour, because I must be back. My daughter is waiting in San Antonio. That was 7 o'clock. At 11, she was telephoning to her daughter, I'm sorry, I'm still here. Because Elmyr is much more fascinating than I have expected. Yes, I had just here as a guest a very dear old friend of mine, Ursula Andress. And I tried to talk her into it to stay here, because I think we two together would have been most perfect Beauty and the Beast. The same moment I arrived, Salvatore Dali arrived in a taxi and taking out paintings of the paintings of the paintings. And I said, what are you doing here with all these paintings? Well, there's a cocktail party. I said, but what is the painting doing? Well, on a cocktail party to Margaret, they always take paintings because there's always a chance to sell something. I took Jacqueline de Reeves down to my studio looking around the paintings. Elmyr, I must tell you that One day, Salvador Dali said to me, Jacqueline, I want to paint you all life-size, nude, covered with all your diamonds, and in front a big male gold penis. And Jacqueline says, I asked Salvatore, and how much you want for all that? Besides the gold penis, $25,000 and few little diamonds. So I said, Jacqueline, I paint you for less. And no gold penis and no diamonds. When you tell naughty stories about other people, you have so much more spirit in when you are reluctantly talk about yourself.
In the 12 years he spent in the States, which he spent there illegally, since he only had a 3-month visa, he moved about constantly.
Who knows? What is it? What makes you travel? You want to change the landscape, you want to meet new people, you want to meet new faces, you think you meet somebody more attractive in the next town as you met there. You never know. Why? Why people travel? Do you know?
Because the FBI and the police in 4 different states were on his tail. And he had to be one jump ahead of them. He had to whip off to Mexico and then up to Canada and then back to New York. And then when he heard that the police were knocking on his door in Miami Beach, he had to scuttle out of town on a Greyhound bus to Texas. That's why he was on the move, and that's why he was never caught.
I have an offer to make. Let's say we could find a Modigliani made by Kissling, a Modigliani by Elmyr, and one Modigliani by Modigliani. And we put these 3 drawings in front of a group. Let's say one is a director or curator of drawings of the Metropolitan, one is a soi-disant expert, and one is a great art dealer. It could be anyone, from Knödler to Pearls, or any of the great ones, who consider themselves great and experts. And if any of them recognize which one is which, I am ready to make a great gift to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and I can hang it next to some other Modiglianis who are possibly also by me.
When Elmyr went into an art gallery and was willing to sell a Modigliani whose market value was, say, $20,000 for $5,000, even if the dealer suspected that there might be something wrong with the painting, he was willing, for that price, to turn a blind eye to his suspicions. I don't say that happened every time, but I think it accounts for the extraordinary amount of paintings that Elmyr was able to sell when he was selling on his own in the States.
They're not here, I'm sorry, my glasses. Some of my glasses, I know. Excusez-moi. Non ha visto la gamba? J'en ai 2 paires, alors une il faudra trouver. Je m'excuse. It's always the same story. I never, now, with all this coming and going, I really don't find anything anymore.
All the world loves to see the experts and the establishment made a fool of. And everyone likes to feel that those who set themselves up as experts are really just as gullible as anybody else. And so Elmyr, as the great faker of the 20th century, becomes a modern folk hero for the rest of us. The extraordinary thing is that with all the half-truths and lies built up around his life, to my knowledge, he has never made a mistake when identifying a painting. When he looks at a painting, a Matisse, a Chagall, a Modigliani, and says, "That's mine, I did it," he is always right. If anything, he errs on the side of caution.
And you're coming to the party also, yes? Yes, tomorrow night, yes. How about you? If you like to come, yes. Great time. I just saw I came to Ibiza in 1959 after I found certain aspects of my life in America becoming too difficult. I wandered around Europe for a time and eventually came here. I liked life here. I liked the island. I liked the atmosphere. I liked the people. And so I decided that is the place where I want to settle. So I settled here. I lived the first years very quietly, comfortably, and there was never any disturbance, no problems. Then suddenly, one day, one very special day, everything exploded around me. I found myself destitute, without any money, and all my personal troubles really started. The authorities wanted to expel me from Spain, and they did expel me, but the case went to the Supreme Court. They decided to change the verdict, but they interned me for 2 months. Well, she's Chicky. She's a great friend of mine. She's a great friend of mine who lives here for many years, but she's really from Bilbao. She was very sweet and kind to me. When I was in prison, she came to see me every day, practically. She brought me radios and the bed in to sleep on, so I shouldn't sleep on the floor and so on.
Well, and what not for you, darling? Well, thank you. I'm so glad.
I was denounced holding orgies and peddling drugs.
Peddling drugs?
Yeah.
Which you never did. That's absurd.
Mark, come here. I want to show you. These are the drawings I made during the time I was in prison. Now that is the prison court who used to be in middle age a monastery, transferred in prison. These are prisoners. They were mostly young people, English and French, mostly some Dutch, who were mostly in prison on a matter of drug and marijuana, heroin, so on and so forth. That was quite a disgusting person. He looks disgusting too, doesn't he? He was again a German whose main preoccupation was his mustache. He kept on nothing but touching his mustache. He was kept on curling and curling and curling his mustache. He had the room number 5, and he was many times in trouble, so his parents decided to let him rot in prison for a while. And the fact is that it's not his fault that I paid the fine to get him out. And there were a number of people whose fine I did pay. On the very end, the judge himself thanked me, and he declared that I'm a very generous and a very kind person. That's a fact.
He's not in jail today for basically 2 reasons. The first is that it would be extremely difficult to prove a case against him. The French police have explained to me that in order to jail him in France, they would have to have 2 witnesses who saw him doing the paintings, who saw him signing the paintings as Vlaminck's or Derain's or Picasso's. And then they would have to prove that when he gave the paintings to a salesman, he knew that they were in fact going to sell them as genuine Matisses and Modiglianis. The other reason he's not in jail is because a court case with Elmyr on the stand would bring such publicity upon the art world that anyone who was involved in it, any art dealer who took the stand, would automatically become suspect and would lose, I would say, a good percentage of his clients.
Well, you like that, do you?
Oh, it's beautiful.
You like it, yes. That's my period of Harlequin.
Did you see Elmyr's
Harlequin, yes.
Harlequin?
Come and see it here.
It's really beautiful.
Come and see it here. You see the rose of the head, you know, it looks really velvety rose. It's just something unusual about it.
Elmyr, do you have others of yours lately?
Yes, it's full here of my things.
Show them.
All full.
Oh, it's lovely.
Yes, there are too many girls. They have to put up with how many? 1 with 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 boys and 5 girls. It's a hard profession. I do want to work. I want to paint my own paintings. I want to live on my own paintings, because even if the book on all these things does bring a certain amount of money in, but I don't want to rely on that. I want to rely uniquely and exclusively of my work. And I think my work is good enough and it's serious enough to give pleasure and joy to the people who will acquire them.
Now that it's out in the open, that the world knows who Elmyr is and what he's done, and now that Elmyr accepts it and says with a certain amount of pride to the world, yes, it's me, I am the great art forger of the 20th century. Now I think he can recapture that personal vision and that personal honesty that he once had, and can become a fine painter in his own right. Elmyr is going to stay in Spain. For one thing, he can't leave Spain. And I think he'll be happy if he continues to paint and if he has some success at it. And if he avoids the fate that he's always feared, which is that of a lonely old person who has failed. He needs the love and adoration of his friends more than cash.
Voilà, Brigitte la victoire. Bonsoir, bonsoir, bonsoir. Entrez, bonjour, cher ami. Bonjour, cher ami. Entrez, prenez des drinks. Vous êtes très belle. Voyez l'illustre aussi. Bonjour, madame. Bonjour, bonjour, Michel. Vous voulez un verre au bar? Nice to see you. Great. Hello, David. Good evening. Hello, David. Good to see you. Ciao, ciao. Nice to see you. Go to the bar and get a drink. Oh, quelle est belle. Comme elle est belle. Les fleurs, elle est venue m'apporter les fleurs cet
I
après-midi.
must tell you something. I went to the airport today, picked up a copy of the London Daily Express, and there was an article, Exposed, a man who holds the art world to ransom. Sitting in the sunny studio of the
Fantastic.
60,000-pound villa on the Mediterranean island of Ibiza, it took Elmyr de Hory, the world's greatest art forger, just 1 hour to draw an original Modigliani. And then it goes on to tell the story of how I took the Modigliani to the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
There's a big article. Holds the art world to ransom. Hello, Bible. Good to see you. You saw the article in the Daily Express? Immense article. Look at it, look at it. Expose the man who holds the art world at ransom. Anybody want to eat?
J'ai l'air intégralement
Ursula.
J'ouvre la bouche. Oui. Ah oui, ça a l'air absolument.
Well, happily there's only one. Somebody in Germany said, like him didn't exist in our century and probably in no century. Mallorca, Chopin, Ibiza, Elmyr. Certainly Elmyr is profound embarrassment to them all. Elmyr is a profound embarrassment to them all. Il est un embarrassement profond à tout le monde de l'art. À tout le monde de l'art.
What period is this Matisse?
36. 36.
And what is the price of that today?
Probably around $8,000 to $10,000. Well, now that's something else again, what I'm doing here. That is Picasso. I think in general that is Picasso. It's half of his period of Toros. He made a long series of Toros, and that's half the picadors. People very brutal looking, very tough, hard, and brutal. So he always painted, made again and again and again, hundreds of magazines. Picasso would get for something like that of $15,000-$20,000. I would sell it for less. Would you like to have another drawing by Picasso?
Which period is that one?
I think 36, 34. He made a series after one of his maîtresses. I'm going to make a painting by Matisse. But you have to give me a little time, yeah? that was just a simple demonstration. And he doesn't want to be a Matisse. He just wants to demonstrate how in short minutes close I can get to Matisse. I feel that we should burn it. We burn everything, but myself. Probably it will sting. Great, look there. Isn't it superb? Wonderful. Goodbye, Matisse. Beautiful. La grande surprise. Alors je le porte là, oui. Well, here is a surprise. Here is a caryatide in the manner of a famous Italian painter who died in early age around 1920. His work is very highly prized. I made it in his manner. There's a good friend of mine who is an expert on the matter. He said the drawing today on a sale would bring somewhere around $15,000. It's a good drawing. Should he burn it? You think I should keep it for the seguros of my old age? All right, I will. So I put it back, yes.